Ever wanted to play the worst performing spec in BFA? Well, here's a guide to show you how to be that special snowflake. Just kidding. Actually, not really. Hey guys, Gongrongzong here. Hope you're all doing great. 8.1 has seen some considerable changes to the Pharaoh Druid, which has resulted in some pretty major changes in our rotations. New talents have been added in and reshuffled around, along with stat weights that have been completely reversed. And so it's my hope that this guide will be able to help you out in your kitty adventures. If you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to leave a comment below. I'll be more than happy to help you out. And if you'd like to see me play my Pharaoh Druid live, be sure to check out my new Twitch channel, link in the description below. Shameless plug. If you're new to Pharaoh, here's a quick rundown of the spec. Pharaoh Druids operate similarly to rogues. We have energy, a resource bar that naturally regenerates over time that is used to activate abilities. We also have combo points, a system comprised of combo point generating abilities and combo point spending abilities, also known as finishers. The baseline combo point generating abilities we possess are Rake, Shred, Swipe and Thrash, and if talented into, Moonfire and Brutal Slash. The baseline combo point spenders that we have are Rip, Ferocious Bite, and Maim, and if talented into, Primal Wrath. Knowing when and how to utilize these abilities will be key to performing well with the Pharaoh. Okay, let's go over the significant talent changes first. An all-new AoE role has been added comprising of 2 talents, Primal Wrath, a bleed AoE combo point finisher, and Scent of Blood, a talent that makes your standard swipe ability, when combined with Thrash, cost less energy the more enemies there are. This has resulted in us having to choose one of these AoE talents for single target DPS, and the most optimal choice for this is Brutal Slash. Furthermore, the addition of Sabertooth into our first tier talent role has also made it the default choice for single target, as it outperforms Lunar Inspiration by a mile. Lastly, on the level 75 tier, Soul of the Forest, especially when combined with Sabertooth, outperforms both Savage Roar and Incarnation significantly. This will of course always be subject to number tweakings, but as for the foreseeable future and most likely for the rest of 8.1, there is currently no reason to take either of these 2 talents. Thus, this is your default talent choice for single target DPS. You will be using these talents for all of Uldir's bosses, and from what I can tell on the PTR, all of Battle for Dazar'alor's bosses too. The only reason to take either Scent of Blood or Primal Wrath would be on very niche encounters whereby 4 or more targets are consistently up throughout the majority of the boss fight, such as Mythic Zul. For anything comprising of phases of adds that need to be bursted down, or 2 primary targets, Brutal Slash will pull far ahead. Now, what about Mythic Plus? For Tyrannical, the choice is obvious and defaults back to this standard layout for single target. On the other hand, you have some variety of choice on Fortified Weeks. This, however, and I cannot stress this enough, highly depends upon the level of your key and the gear and skill level of your party members. For example, even though the affixes in this footage were fortified and teaming, the combination with the most amount of adds by far, I still stuck to using the default single target DPS talent layout. This was because I prioritized killing the infected mobs much more than trying to spread AoE damage. I felt like I would lose a significant amount of single target DPS if I didn't do so, causing the infected mobs to take longer to kill and for whatever adds they are pulled alongside with to survive much longer. This is also coupled with the fact that more often than not, there are numerous encounters in every Mythic Plus dungeon whereby you only encounter 1 or 2 mobs, or at times crowd control the rest. Adding in the fact that Brutal Slash adds a sizable amount of DPS to your single target rotation for the bosses, from my experience, taking everything into consideration, Brutal Slash was way more practical even on Fortified Weeks. But again, this is just my experience with the people I play with and the level of key I am accustomed to doing, anywhere from 10s to 12s. If you are doing a fortified mythic key below level 10, that is without the infected affix, the sheer amount of AoE damage that Primal Wrath can do on 3 to 4 targets is substantial and pulls far ahead of Brutal Slash. If you have a tank that has no issues with pulling very large packs of mobs consistently in lower level keys, Primal Wrath becomes a very viable choice. Finally, Predator may be a choice that some of you are looking at for AoE. However, from my experience, it's not really worth it. The amount of DPS you give up by not choosing Sabertooth is too significant to warrant an ability that is unreliable at best, as its optimization is dependent upon having multiple mobs in every pool and having them not all dying at the same time. So, in a nutshell, the standard single target DPS talent layout for raids and tyrannical, while it's a toss-up between Brutal Slash and Primal Wrath for fortified weeks, dependent on the level of your key and your party makeup. But personally, I still stick to Brutal Slash for any key that's level 10 and above, because all that AoE damage will be for naught if the infected mobs aren't dead. However, with the introduction of Season 2 in 8.1.5, the new Reaping affix will replace Infected, an affix that causes all previously slain mobs to resurrect and chase down and attack the group at certain points of the dungeon. At this point, it is difficult to say whether Brutal Slash or Primal Wrath will pull ahead for this, but at least on paper, it does look like Primal Wrath may just pull ahead on fortified weeks, assuming the sheer quantity of mobs that may rise up. Okay, let's go through our rotation. If you are new to Feral, the main thing you have to be aware of is the concept of snapshotting. Snapshotting refers to how our damage over time abilities, our bleeds, take on any damage enhancing buffs at the point of time they are cast, and retain these damage enhancements throughout the remainder of their duration, regardless of whether the buffs expire on your character or not. The two main damage enhancing buffs of the Feral Druid are Blood Talons and Tiger's Fury. When coupled with how Sabertooth operates, increasing the duration of Rip, our hardest hitting bleed ability, for 4 seconds for every combo point spent, you should be able to maintain a fully buffed Rip on the target, essentially forever. Here is a live example. I currently possess 2 combo points. I cast Regrowth, triggering Blood Talon charges on myself, increasing the damage of my next 2 bleed abilities by 25%. I also pop Tiger's Fury, further increasing my damage by 15%. Casting Rip while these 2 buffs are up will allow it to snapshot a 40% damage buff on itself. I then continue to build up combo points and continuously Ferocious Bite the target, ensuring that the enhanced Rip stays on indefinitely, even though the individual buffs have expired on my character. These snapshotting concepts apply to all bleed abilities that Ferals possess: Rake, Thresh, and Primal Wrath. In addition to this, you must be aware that the playstyle of the Feral is very similar to how rogues used to traditionally operate. This is not a spec whereby you spam buttons whenever they light up to do the most DPS. It is not a spec that can generate combo points quickly, relatively speaking. In direct contrast, you often have to pool either your energy, combo points, or both at strategic intervals in order to take advantage of cooldowns, such as Tiger's Fury or Blood Talon charges. This will be a concept that you will only be able to get better at with practice. So, the ideal Feral opener for a raid or mythic boss goes as such: cast Blood Talons on yourself, go into cat form and stealth, cast Berserk, cast Tiger's Fury, hit the target with Rake, immediately cast Rip, and then spam a combination of Brutal Slash and or Shred till you get 5 combo points, followed by a Ferocious Bite. This bite will refresh the Rip to its full duration, and maintain both buffs from Blood Talons and Tiger's Fury onto that Rip. As long as this Rip does not fall off, it will always do 40% more damage, 25% from Blood Talons, and 15% from Tiger's Fury. Of course, this is the ideal opener, and often during situations such as in Mythic Plus dungeons, you will not have the capacity to carry out this opener on every mob, whether it be due to abilities being on cooldown or the fight being very hectic. Now for our single target rotation. Your priority would be to always have a Blood Talon charge saved up for your combo point finishers: Rip, Ferocious Bite, or Primal Wrath if you are taking it. Ideally, what you want to do is to perform a finisher, have a Predatory Swiftness charge saved up, the buff that allows you to instant cast a Regrowth for the Blood Talon charges, spend energy till you have 5 combo points again, cast Regrowth, and then perform another Ferocious Bite, followed by a Rake. You could also change this up slightly based on whether your rake is falling off or not, generating up to 4 combo points, cast regrow for 2 charges of Blood Talons, cast Rake to get 5 combo points, using up 1 charge of Blood Talons on the Rake, and then cast your finisher, utilizing the last charge of Blood Talons on it. On the few occasions that there is no need to refresh your Rake yet, make sure you spend the regrowth charge on Brutal Slash, as it is the next hardest hitting ability in our single target arsenal. With some practice, there is very little reason why you shouldn't have a charge always being spent on these abilities. Optimally, find situations to use your Tiger's Fury where you can restore all 50 points of energy that it gives, while still having it up long enough to benefit a Rake or Ferocious Bite. If all else fails, which it does from time to time based on the encounter, always make sure you have a Rake or Rip up on the target, irregardless of whether it has been snapshotted with Blood Talons or Tiger's Fury. However, make sure to refresh your Rakes or Rip with a Blood Talons as soon as possible, regardless of how long a duration it has remaining on it, unless the boss is going to die within the next few seconds or so, depending on the encounter. With the additional Brutal Slash into our single target rotation comes about this question. Both are combo point generating abilities, so when should we use which? Numerically, Brutal Slash now hits harder than Shred, and thus should be prioritized during the duration of a Tiger's Fury to take advantage of the additional 15% damage that it adds. In other words, in order to optimize your DPS, save up as many charges as possible of Brutal Slash in anticipation of your Tiger's Fury coming off cooldown. In addition, you also want to watch out for your Omen of Clarity procs, as they will make your next Shred or Brutal Slash cost 0 energy. In almost all situations, you want to ensure that you use the proc on Shred, as it is the higher energy cost ability. Don't sweat too much about this though, as often the proc will occur just at the moment you press Brutal Slash, consuming the proc then. Just make sure to prioritize using Shred for Omen procs as often as you can. This is the point whereby the skill gap between good pharaohs and bad pharaohs becomes pretty large, a balancing act between saving up as many charges as possible while making sure you don't overcap the charges. That is, staying at 3 charges of Brutal Slash at any point of time. Now, what about our AoE rotation? We have yet to cover one of our AoE abilities, and that is Thrash, our AoE bleed combo point generator. There is no hard and fast rule for this, but I would recommend using Thrash once there are 2 targets, and definitely when there are more than 2. Keep Thrash up at all times, alongside with Rake on as many targets as possible. Refrain from using Shred if there are multiple targets up, and instead focus on keeping Rake on all of them. Hit as many targets as possible with Brutal Slash, while spending your combo points on Rip. If you have chosen Primal Wrath, then use Swipe instead of Shred or Brutal Slash to build combo points on multiple targets. Always only cast Primal Wrath when it's at 5 combo points, as its damage drops off significantly with less. To put it simply, bleed as many targets as you can with your Rake, Rips, Thrashers, and Primal Wraths, with as many snapshots on as many bleeds as you can. Now comes the question of when you should refresh your bleeds. There is a simple answer to this. Rake, Thrash, Moonfire, and Primal Wrath can be safely refreshed when there's less than 4 seconds remaining on them, while Rip can be safely refreshed when there's less than 7 seconds on it. Should Savage Roar come into play, it is safe to refresh it under the 10-second mark. However, something to keep note of is that it is always worth to spend however many combo points you have for a Ferocious Bite to refresh a fully buffed Rip in an emergency. For example, if your fully buffed Rip is about to drop off and you only have 1 or 2 combo points to perform a Ferocious Bite, just do so. More often than not, it will always be worth it. This segues nicely into the last part about add-ons. Which add-ons you use is entirely up to you. But make no mistake, in order to play Pharaoh at any competent capacity, you will need to use add-ons to track the timers and buffed states of your bleeds. I personally use a combination of 2 fantastic add-ons, TELLMEWHEN and DOTFOCUS. TELLMEWHEN is an amazing user-friendly add-on that can be used to track any and all buffs or debuffs. It consists of easily maneuverable icons that you can place anywhere on your screen, with countdown timers attached to them. From a DPS perspective, I use it to track the remaining amount of time and charges on my Blood Talons, Tiger's Fury, Berserk, and Predatory Swiftness. I also use it to track the remaining cooldown of my heal over time spells and survival instincts, but those are more essential for PvP than PvE. However, the drawback to TELLMEWHEN is that it can only track timers and charges, and cannot keep track of which one of my bleeds has or has not yet been enhanced by Blood Talons or Tiger's Fury. This is where DOTFOCUS comes in. DOTFOCUS operates similarly to TELLMEWHEN, with the added benefit of small coloured indicators showing you whether your bleeds have been snapshotted or not. For example, the small blue circle at the bottom of each ability indicates whether it has been snapshotted by Blood Talons, and the small yellow circle whether it has snapshotted Tiger's Fury. The oval at the top of the icon indicates whether or not the existing buffs on my Druid, that is, Blood Talons, Tiger's Fury, or a combination of both, are more powerful or less powerful than the existing bleed. When it is red, it showcases that I should not be reapplying that bleed as it is more powerful than whatever buffs I currently have on me, while when it is green, that I should reapply the bleed as my current buffs will give it a more powerful snapshot. When it is grey, it means that whatever buffs I currently have on my character are identical to the snapshotted power level of the bleed that exists on the mob. That may sound a little complicated, so let me go through a real example with you guys. As you can see, the rip I currently have on the dummy has no coloured circles, indicating that it was not buffed by either Blood Talons or Tiger's Fury. Upon obtaining Blood Talons on my character, the oval turns to green, indicating that the next rip my Druid can cast will be stronger than the rip that currently exists on the mob. Casting a rip snapshotted with a charge of Blood Talons will then add a blue circle to the icon, refreshing its duration in the process. Similarly, casting a Tiger's Fury with Blood Talons on the next 5 combo points will cause a green oval to appear yet again, indicating to me that the next rip I cast will be stronger than the existing one. Applying this double snapshotted rip will then add a yellow circle to the icon. However, at this point, as long as I do not possess Blood Talons and Tiger's Fury on my Druid at the same time, the oval will always stay red, indicating that whatever version of rip I can apply next will be weaker, and if I choose to do so, both yellow and blue circles will disappear. This process will seem overwhelming to you if you are just starting out with the Pharaoh, and you will mess up many times. We have almost always been the most complicated spec to play in WoW in recent expansions. But as always, practice makes perfect, and you'll be all the more fulfilling when you perform well with the Pharaoh. 8.1 is also a great time to jump back into the class, as the optimal build currently only requires you to track a maximum of 2 or 3 timers, whereas in 8.0, we needed to track up to 5 at times. Alright, now on to the AZERITE traits for the Pharaoh Druid. The simplest way to put this is that I have no correct answer for you. 2 websites currently exist that I look up regularly to see which traits are currently the best performing. They are Hero Damage and Blood Mallet. However, I cannot emphasize enough that these lists should only act as guidelines, as the AZERITE traits that are best for you will depend upon your current stat weights and the eye level of each AZERITE armor piece. This will be the same concept when a 5th AZERITE armor trait ring comes out in 8.1.5. If you are just playing the game casually and can't really be bothered about min-maxing, then just aim for the traits that are the top of these lists. 90% of the time, you'll be performing just fine for most forms of content. As a general rule of thumb, 2 sets of Jungle Fury with 1 Uldir trait seems to work best for Uldir, with 3 sets of Jungle Fury for Mythic Plus, or 2 sets of Jungle Fury and 1 set of Gushing Lacerations if you are using Primal Wrath. If, however, you are planning to progress in any form of PVE content, whether it be Raids or Mythic Plus, there is a surefire way to figure out which traits are best for you, and it's called simming. A how-to of simming could take up an entire video on its own, so I'm just going to heavily summarize the most basic version here. You'll have to download an add-on called Simulation Craft, from which you'll be able to copy-paste a string of code representing all your gear into this website, Raid bots. From my personal experience, this service is completely safe. It's used by hundreds of thousands of WoW players, and you shouldn't have any concerns about using it. The one you'll be using most is the top gear option, which compares all of the gear in your inventory to determine which is the best. From this, you can easily tell which piece of gear, from Azerite armor to even trinkets, are the most optimal for your character. Utilizing these two methods of Blood Mallet or hero damage as a guideline, and raid bots as a confirmation, I am very able to easily determine which pieces of Azerite armor and traits are currently the best for me. Now, what about stat priority? Well, again I would direct you to the stat weights button of raid bots to determine what's best for you. Every stat is subjected to the law of diminishing returns. The more you pump into it, the less impactful it becomes. But as a general rule of thumb, the major change from 8.0 to 8.1 is that haste has become our lowest stat weight, with crit in first place and mastery a close second. And that's about it. Probably one of the more complex class guides you've ever seen. If you've watched up to this part, thank you for watching all the way to the end, and I wish you all the best with your Pharaoh. If you've any questions at all, please don't hesitate to leave a comment below. I'll be more than happy to help you out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in Azeroth.